Alan Sapinsley is one of the strangest people to ever push back against Tony Soprano because he does not come from Tony's world. He is not a rival boss, a captain, a soldier, an FBI agent, or a street-level enemy trying to prove himself. He is a wealthy lawyer with a beach house, a contract, and the smug confidence of a man who believes the system is on his side. That is what makes him interesting. Tony is used to men who challenge him through violence, status, loyalty, fear, or betrayal. Alan challenges him through paperwork. The situation begins with Whitecaps, the beach house Tony wants to buy for Carmela. On the surface, it is a gift. Tony wants the house to represent a new chapter in the marriage. It has the ocean, the view, the space, the luxury, and the image of a peaceful future. It is the kind of thing Tony always thinks can fix emotional damage. He does not know how to repair trust in a clean way, so he tries to cover the wound with something expensive. A house becomes his apology. A view becomes his version of intimacy. Money becomes the language he uses when the real language of the marriage has broken down. But the problem is that Whitecaps comes too late. Tony and Carmela's marriage is already full of resentment, humiliation, lies, and years of damage. The house is beautiful, but it cannot erase the affairs. It cannot erase Carmela's knowledge of what Tony is. It cannot erase the feeling that she has spent years living inside a comfortable prison. The house is supposed to prove that Tony still values her, but it also proves how badly he misunderstands what is wrong. He thinks the marriage can still be stabilized by lifestyle. Carmela is realizing the lifestyle is part of the trap. So when the marriage collapses and Tony wants out of the deal, Whitecaps changes meaning. It is no longer a dream house. It becomes evidence of a failed gesture. Tony tried to buy a future, and now the future is dead before he even gets the keys. That alone would be enough to anger him. But then Alan Sapinsley refuses to give back the deposit, and suddenly the failed gift becomes a direct insult. This is where Alan becomes more than a side character. He becomes a different kind of force against Tony. He is not physically stronger than Tony. He is not more dangerous in the street. He does not have soldiers outside waiting for orders. But he has something Tony cannot easily punch through. He has legitimacy. He has status. He has the law. He has the confidence of a professional man who believes his kind of power is cleaner than Tony's. That is what Tony cannot stand. Tony wants civilian comfort, but he hates civilian limits. He wants the house, the school system, the restaurants, the respect from doctors and lawyers, and the appearance of being a successful suburban father. But he does not want to be treated like an ordinary buyer when ordinary rules turn against him. He wants both worlds. He wants the benefits of legitimacy and the freedom of crime. When the legal world helps him, he enjoys it. When it traps him, he acts like it is an attack. Alan's position is simple. Tony made a deal, the deal fell apart, and the deposit stays. In Alan's mind, that is business. Tony's personal life is not Alan's problem. Tony's marriage collapsing does not cancel the agreement. Tony's regret does not matter. His anger does not matter. His reputation does not matter. For once, Tony is not being treated as a boss. He is being treated as a man who signed paperwork. That is humiliating for him. Tony is powerful because people usually adjust around him. They lower their voices. They laugh when they are supposed to laugh. They avoid certain phrases. They think twice before refusing him. His entire personality has been shaped by years of people making room for his temper. Even when people dislike him, they often still fear the consequences of crossing him. Alan does not react like that at first. He keeps his polite tone, keeps his legal position, and refuses to bend. That refusal makes Tony feel small. The real insult is not only the money, it is the feeling of being trapped by someone he sees as smug, soft, and protected. Alan is not a gangster, but he still acts like a predator. He uses the contract as a weapon. He knows he has leverage, and he enjoys it. He hides aggression inside procedure. He hides greed inside principle. He hides arrogance behind the language of law. That is why he is such a strong foil for Tony. Alan is not innocent in the simple sense. He is not a helpless civilian being crushed by the mob. He is a shark too, just in a different ocean. Tony uses fear. Alan uses legal technicality. Tony pressures people with presence. Alan pressures people with language. Tony comes from a world where dominance is obvious. Alan comes from a world where dominance can sound reasonable. This is one of the sharper ideas in The Sopranos. The show does not treat the mafia as the only corrupt force in America. It keeps showing that the same instincts exist everywhere. The mob is just the blunt version. In the legal world, the medical world, the political world, and the real estate world, people still use leverage. They still protect their own interests. They still exploit weakness. They just do it with better clothes and cleaner words. Alan represents respectable aggression. He is not better than Tony because he follows the law. He is only safer. His kind of power is approved by society, so it does not look as ugly. But underneath the surface, he is still trying to win. He is still trying to keep money from a broken deal. He is still enjoying the fact that Tony is stuck. He just gets to tell himself that he is being professional. Tony can sense that hypocrisy. He may not be able to explain it with perfect clarity, but he feels it. Alan looks down on him while behaving with the same appetite for advantage. That is what makes Tony's anger more intense. If Alan were simply a decent man defending himself, the conflict would feel different. But Alan is smug. He is superior. He treats Tony like a crude inconvenience while using his own clean version of pressure. That is where the two men mirror each other. Both are asking the same question. What can I get away with? Alan believes he can keep the deposit because the contract allows it. Tony believes he can harass Alan because direct violence would be too risky, but indirect pressure might work. Neither man is really thinking about fairness. Both men are thinking about leverage. The difference is that Alan assumes the battlefield will stay legal. Tony does not. That is Alan's mistake. He thinks Tony will either accept the loss or fight through lawyers. He does not fully understand that Tony can move sideways. Tony does not need to prove himself right in court. He only needs to make Alan's life uncomfortable enough that keeping the money stops feeling worth it. That is why the Stugatz becomes the perfect weapon. Tony does not send someone to beat Alan up. That would be too obvious and too dangerous. Alan is a lawyer. He has the kind of social protection that makes open violence risky, so Tony adapts. He takes the dispute out of the legal world and turns it into a war of comfort. He parks the boat nearby and blasts music until Alan's peaceful beach house becomes unbearable. It is petty, childish, and extremely effective. The genius of Tony's move is that he attacks what Alan actually values. Alan's house is not just property, it is his sanctuary. It represents peace, class, success, and distance from messier people. Tony ruins that. He brings noise into the clean space. He turns the view into a headache. He makes luxury feel cheap. He does not have to touch Alan, he only has to poison the atmosphere. That is one of Tony's real talents. He understands emotional pressure. He knows people are not just legal actors. They are bodies. They get tired. They get irritated. Their spouses get annoyed. Their homes stop feeling safe. Their patience runs out. Alan can handle argument. He can handle a letter. He can handle legal threats. What he cannot handle is the feeling that Tony's world has invaded his private life. This is Tony translating mob power into civilian language. He cannot fight Alan the way he would fight someone inside the crew, so he changes the form of intimidation. He makes the pressure deniable enough to survive, but obvious enough to work. He does not need to say anything directly. The message is clear. You may have the contract, but I can still make you miserable. That is the real collision between them. Alan's power is abstract. Tony's power is physical and sensory. Alan has clauses. Tony has noise. Alan has legal confidence. Tony has the ability to make peace disappear. Alan thinks power lives in documents. Tony knows power also lives in discomfort. But Tony's victory does not make him noble. It only proves he is willing to make the fight uglier than Alan is. That is the point. Tony does not win because he is right. He wins because he is more willing to contaminate the situation. Alan wants to keep the dispute inside the rules. Tony is willing to go outside them without crossing far enough to bring serious consequences. He finds the gray area and lives there. That says everything about Tony's personality. Tony cannot accept normal frustration as normal frustration. When reality blocks him, he takes it personally. A refusal becomes disrespect. A contract becomes humiliation. A lost deposit becomes a war. This is what power has done to him. It has trained him to experience limits as insults. He is so used to people bending that standing still feels like aggression. Alan pushes that exact nerve. He treats Tony like someone who can be told no. He makes Tony experience the ordinary pain of consequences. Tony wanted the house, then he wanted out, and Alan refused to make that easy. In a normal life, that is annoying. In Tony's mind, it becomes intolerable. The deeper reason is that Alan is standing in front of something Tony does not want to face. The real disaster is not the deposit. The real disaster is the marriage. Tony's home life is collapsing because of years of betrayal and emotional damage. Whitecaps was supposed to hide that. When the deal falls apart, Alan becomes the person holding the financial remains of Tony's failed fantasy. That makes Alan emotionally useful to Tony. Tony can aim rage at him instead of sitting with the truth. He cannot easily fix Carmela's trust. He cannot erase the affairs. He cannot undo the way he has made her feel. But he can attack Alan. He can turn a marital failure into a business conflict. He can turn shame into action. That is one of Tony's strongest patterns. Pain becomes anger. Shame becomes punishment. Loss becomes revenge. He rarely processes defeat directly. He externalizes it. If he feels humiliated, someone else has to feel pressure. If he feels powerless, someone else has to be made uncomfortable. Alan gives him a clean target because Alan is arrogant enough to deserve it in Tony's mind. This is why the Whitecap subplot is so revealing. Tony may get satisfaction from forcing Alan to back down, but he still loses the bigger battle. He still loses the house. He still loses the dream attached to it. He still loses control of the marriage. His small victory over Alan does not heal anything. It just gives him a moment where he can feel powerful while everything important is falling apart. That is classic Tony. He often wins the immediate fight and loses the deeper one. The same pattern appears throughout his life. He can dominate a room but not control his household. He can intimidate enemies but not create real peace. He can provide money but not emotional safety. He can force people to react, but he cannot force them to love him in the way he wants. With Alan, he proves he can still pressure a man into surrender. But he cannot make Whitecaps mean what it was supposed to mean. He cannot make Carmilla forget why the house became necessary in the first place. That is what the situation says about a man like Tony. Power can make someone effective, but it can also make him emotionally deformed. Tony has spent so long being obeyed that ordinary resistance feels like an injury. He has spent so long solving problems through pressure that reflection feels useless. He has spent so long turning fear into control that he does not know what to do when the problem is moral, emotional, or personal. Alan exposes that because he is not afraid in the usual way, at least not at first. He has enough money, education, and legal status to believe Tony can be managed. That confidence makes him one of the few civilians who does not instantly shrink. He pushes back with the tools of his class. He reminds Tony that there are rooms where violence is not the first language. He forces Tony to operate on different ground. But Alan also exposes the weakness of that world. His status protects him only up to a point. The law gives him leverage, but it does not give him peace once Tony starts playing dirty. The contract can keep the deposit, but it cannot stop the boat. Alan's mistake is believing his rules are stronger than Tony's willingness to make life unpleasant. That does not mean Alan is stupid. It means he misunderstands the kind of man he is dealing with. Tony's decisions are not only financial, they are emotional. Alan thinks the fight is about money. Tony thinks it is about pride. Alan thinks he is defending a deal. Tony thinks he is being mocked. Once the conflict becomes personal for Tony, the normal logic of cost and benefit changes. That is why Tony is dangerous in small situations. His reactions are not always proportional. A small insult can become a major problem because it connects to a larger wound. Alan is not only keeping a deposit, he is making Tony feel powerless during one of the most humiliating moments of his life. That is enough to make Tony escalate. The childishness of Tony's retaliation matters too. The bow tactic works, but it is also immature. It has the emotional shape of a kid making noise until he gets his way. That is part of Tony's character. He has the resources of a powerful criminal adult, but many of his emotional reactions come from a wounded, entitled, easily deprived part of himself. When he does not get what he wants, he does not simply accept it. He creates a situation where the other person has to suffer too. That mixture is what makes him terrifying. He is not just strategic, he is reactive. He is not just violent, he is emotionally needy. He does not only want money, he wants the world to confirm his importance. When Alan refuses to do that, Tony has to restore the balance. Alan's role is brief, but he matters because he shows that Tony's enemies do not need to be grand villains to reveal him. A lawyer with a beach house can do it. A deposit can do it. A normal legal boundary can do it. Anything that makes Tony feel reduced can pull the same response out of him. And Alan himself is worth analyzing because he is not simply a victim. He is a portrait of upper-class arrogance. He believes his aggression is more civilized because it is legal. He looks down on Tony while using his own form of pressure. He speaks from the high ground, but he is still protecting his own advantage. That makes him a perfect Sopranos character. He appears for a short time, but he carries a whole idea. The respectable world is not pure. It is just better at hiding its violence. Tony sees that, but he does not respond with moral clarity. He responds with mob logic. If Alan is going to use his tools, Tony will use his. If Alan makes the deal painful, Tony will make the house painful. The result is not justice, it is escalation. That is what Whitecaps becomes. Not a beach house story, but a fight between two systems of pressure. Alan represents legal power, class confidence, and polite predation. Tony represents criminal pressure, emotional volatility, and the refusal to accept limits. Both men are selfish. Both men are trying to win. But Tony is more willing to drag the conflict into the dirt. That is why he eventually gets the result he wants. Alan can push back, but he cannot live comfortably with the consequences of pushing back. He thought he was dealing with a man trapped by a contract. He was actually dealing with a man who treats being trapped as an insult to his identity. The final meaning of Alan Sapinsley is that he shows Tony from a different angle. Tony does not need a mafia war to reveal who he is. He only needs someone to block him. Alan makes Tony feel like an ordinary man bound by ordinary rules, and Tony cannot tolerate that. So he turns the situation into another proof of power. But the victory is hollow. Tony beats Alan, yet the house remains a symbol of failure. He gets revenge, but he does not get peace. He forces Alan to bend, but he cannot force his marriage back into shape. That is the tragedy underneath the comedy. Tony can still make other people uncomfortable, but he cannot escape himself. Alan pushes back, and Tony answers exactly as Tony always does. Not with acceptance, not with growth, not with self-awareness, with pressure